To item 9, and we have Andrew, Aaron, Eric, Beth, Ross. Are you coming back? No. Maybe? No. Andrew. Looks as if you're on your lonesome, Andrew. Parole. Right now, I just draw your attention, councillors, to some slightly extra words I've added to the resolution to get some context around some of that, some understanding as to why. Thank you. Andrew. Good morning.
From officers to make changes to some of our targeted rates and fees and charges, to maintain cost recovery and in many cases provide some assistance to ratepayers or improve the transparency of our costs. When we discussed this at the workshop, we had a few questions from councillors. We've distributed last night responses to those questions that give you further information that was sought on a number of the issues here. The first issue on the list, I'll just run quickly through them, then I'll come back to the waste issue to give you some more information. So the first issues are around some proposed increases to our waste targeted rates to recover some of the additional costs we're facing. We're also proposing to change our charging for the first swimming pool fencing safety inspection from a one-off 3-yearly charge to a charge of $44 a year on the rates bill, making it easier for the customers. They only have to pay one bill. Makes it also easier for the councillors, or for the council, sorry, by reducing our administration costs. We're proposing to introduce a loan repayment rate for connection to the expanded Watercare water and wastewater system in the Clevedon area. This will help some of those ratepayers who wish to connect and provide them with some financial support which they can pay back over time on their rates bill. Got a number of expansions and additions to business improvement districts that are being consulted on. Decisions on those will be made only after there's been support indicated in ballots by the businesses who'll be paying the charges. Got some changes to regulatory fees that are being proposed as well. So most of our building consent and resource consent fees are charged on an hourly basis. Customers will pay a deposit and then it'll be settled up once it's been established how many hours it takes for those applications and inspections to be completed. The resource and building consent team did a review of the actual fees that were being charged earlier this year over a 6-month period, and are proposing to change the structure of quite a lot of their fees to ensure that when you come into the council and you're seeking a consent or an approval, an inspection to be undertaken, then you get a much better idea from the level of the deposit as to how much fee you'll actually end up paying. So it's helpful for the customers. It also helps us in making the administration of the charges easier. There's a few other changes to the nature of the charges in there as well. A few of them are related to improving cost recovery. Most of it's about providing a better service to consumers, making it clearer what the charge will be. Within that, there's an adjustment or the introduction of a fee for tour operators for visitors to the Botanic Gardens in Manurewa. This will be focused on the tour bus operators. There'll be no barriers for other visitors, nothing like, not like what we have at the museum, for example, the War Memorial Museum. And the $20 fee will be part of the contract that's with the operators. So that'll be what they're allowed to charge. Also making some adjustments to the high impact event permit fee. And this is not for events that is run at Mount Smart Stadium or Spark Arena, it's for the other commercial events that might be running around the city. The costs are still going to be above what we're charging, and we'll be having a look at that and advising you as part of the long-term plan process, that fee amongst others. But it does allow us to improve our cost recovery. There are a couple of other items that aren't on this agenda, but were recommended by the Environment and Community Committee in September for consultation this year. And they'll be approved at the governing body meeting that follows this meeting. I thought I'd just mention those briefly now to refresh your memory. There's a proposal to add, so when someone comes in to apply for a retrofit your home loan and incur the associated targeted rate, if their application's for more than $2,000, we'll ask them to do a Green Building Council home fit assessment. It'll cost $260, and that gives them some really good information about the best things to do to improve the energy efficiency of their home, and that'll be included on the rate. There's also a proposal coming from last year's consultation to make some changes to the Waitakere area septic tank pump out targeted rate. So we provide a service to pumping out septic tanks in the Waitakere rural areas. The proposal on the table is that the service be removed in the Upper Harbour local board and another neighbouring local board area I've forgotten, and Henderson Massey, apologies, and retained in the Waitakere Ranges local board area where there was a lot of support from the community who liked the convenience of the service. The proposal is that we continue the service, but that it have full cost recovery, which could be a $80 or $90 increase. So they'd be paying the full costs of having their wastewater systems maintained, the same as other septic tank owners in Auckland, and the same for all of those who are connected to the reticulated system. The changes that, so I'll come back now to the changes that we're proposing to the waste targeted rates. Now, the waste service the city provides to its residents, core service of the council, 180,000 tonnes to landfill every year, 130,000 tonnes of recyclable materials. We're proposing an increase of $20 to the base rate, taking it from about 120 to 140, and this will cover mainly the costs of increased costs of associated with recycling because our revenue's fallen. There's no longer as much demand for recyclable materials, and also an increase to the refuse rate charged to residents in Auckland and Manukau, where we have a rates funded service for refuse collection caused by a change in our contracts in that area. Council's alternatives to the increase in the base rate for recycling will be to increase the general rate by an additional 0.6%. The alternative to increasing the refuse collection rate in Auckland and Manukau areas will be to charge it on the base rate to all other customers across the city, or to put a further addition on the general rate. We're not recommending either of those approaches, or putting it on the general rate in either case, or adding the extra refuse costs in Manukau to the base waste rate. This would result in other parties paying the costs of those receiving the services, and there are 37,000 ratepayers in the Auckland region that don't have a council-provided waste service. Now, Parul and Jazz will run you over a little bit more some of the key things that are driving the cost changes leading to this proposal.
Parul?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just cover off the elements around recycling, and then Jazz can talk around the refuse and the procurement. So as we have outlined in the report as well, the whole recycling and the commodity market price falling has led us to the situation that we're in at the moment. And because of the China sword and them not taking recyclables from the world, it has created a drop in the price for the products that we were sending overseas. And mainly the products that we send overseas is mixed paper, which is 60% of what's in our bin, and also mixed plastics. We have been working really hard nationally to look at what solutions can we put on shore for these products not to be reliant on these commodity markets and really suffer the variability in the pricing that we get now. There has been movement from government. They put forward a provincial growth fund for about $40 million for trying to tackle plastics, but fiber remains a matter of concern. And we are really working hard with them, with the ministry, to say this is a matter of concern and we need to look at some national solutions to take us forward. We're also working with industry to make sure that there is capacity within the country to deal with the fiber, and that's mixed paper, and then to look at products that can be utilized within the country. However, while that happens, there is a need to continue with our recycling service, and we will be reliant on those international markets till the time we don't have onshore processing and onshore markets for our products. And to keep the service going, it is essential that we have a funding source to make it sustainable. So that's a bit of background in terms of what's happening in that recycling space.
Thank you. Jaz, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Madam Chair, so in terms of the procurement process that's been run on the waste collection contracts, so that's referred to as the 3 bins collection contracts, just mindful that a decision's been made in the confidential agenda of the Strategic Procurement Committee this afternoon. But overall, we're seeing projected cost savings over the 10-year proposed term. However, we just want to say that there is a little bit of phasing issues. That's where these budget costs are associated, and we can really reveal all of those details once the decision making has happened through the committee this afternoon.
Right, thank you. I have Councillor Newman as for a question. Deputy Mayor.
Andrew, I'm not sure if you can answer it. Do you have any idea of how many tour operator contracts would we anticipate entering into as part of the proposed introduction of the $20 international visitor charge to the Botanic Gardens?
Thanks, Angela.
Morning. There is currently 13 contracts in place through the Regional Parks Concessionaire program, but the scope of how many contracts that we could enter into is quite wide.
Is there any information available as to how many international visitors there might be, and then how many of the international visitors are there by way of organised tours as a subset of the total number?
Not entirely. We do know that a lot of the tour buses which are visiting sometimes do so outside of hours. So we're looking at how we can manage those, and also the numbers that are provided in terms of international visitors have come through surveying, so not necessarily the tour operators.
And how would you, well, what options do you have for managing those who visit outside of hours? Because the Botanic Gardens are quite accessible. There isn't just one point of entry. There are a number of points of entry, and people are entering the gardens at all different hours.
So ultimately that will come through the relationships that we'll build with the operators, specifically some of the key ones that want to include the gardens as part of a product.
Okay, so there's more discussion in that space, but thank you, Angela and Andrew, on that. And I did have a question for Pyrrhal, if I may, Chair. So Pyrrhal, do you have any sort of information on a modelled level of subsidy that would be required for recycling that would be diverted to an onshore processing facility?
Through you, Madam Chair, not at this point in time, because it'll depend on what is the facility doing, and that it is looking at big numbers in terms of what the initial studies that we have done. Whether that's subsidy coming from us or from government investing into it as a stakeholder is something that we're still working through.
Pyrrhal, the numbers that you've referred to are quite big, but I think in the context of a sustainable long-term onshore processing, it's peanuts, I think. And that's just the capex associated with the establishment of the plant. Who holds the pen on the development of the financial models for on-site onshore processing? Because our market just seems so small, and the scale of recyclable product, even with the best product stewardship in the world, just seems to be massive and will require a lot of subsidy. So who's holding the pen on that, and when would that information likely be available?
Through you, Madam Chair, the whole intention is for getting government to lead the work on this, because local bodies cannot individually do this. It has to be done together with government and industry. And what we are asking them to do is actually look at investment in this sector to enable local bodies to actually send the material to the plant, and then also look at what products are you producing that can then be back sold into other companies. So it has to be a end-to-end kind of a solution for New Zealand, otherwise it will not work. And also it is mainly looking at that packaging space to say, if we've got packaging that residents are putting out in their bins, then that gets processed back into packaging, primary or secondary, then that can be used by companies in New Zealand. So it is a bigger piece of work, and hence taking a longer amount of time, because it's trying to push for a national solution. Part of the Ministry for the Environment's work is to look at an infrastructure plan for New Zealand, which is around diversion, and that will have this as part of that as well. And they're also, as you are aware, they're talking about the waste levy increase as well. And as part of that money that comes into that pot, they would be looking at investments through that as well.
So would that be ready in time for the long-term plan discussion? Because it just seems like such an urgent thing, given that the bottom has fallen out of the market in terms of an offshore option.
So in the new year, we are they have a national resource recovery task force that has been set up, and that is looking at working on that. So by the LTP time, we should have more information.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cashmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly to Andrew, for the Cleveland targeted rate, and I don't live there, by the way, for the wastewater solutions, that will only be affected to houses who do connect up in the village, because not all houses are able to connect up in the village.
Andrew.
It's a voluntary targeted rate to assist with connection. We lend the resident money to aid them in that financing that connection costs. People can finance it and connect themselves if they wish.
Yep.
So it's purely voluntary.
I think you should.
The long pipe. Has there been any discussions, probably out of your purvey, but with Watercare about connecting to the houses that aren't connected at this stage? So it's a bit of a scattergun approach for their connection plan. Some houses get connected and others aren't getting a pipe. So is there any look at expansion of their program that you know of? No.
No, I'm not aware of the answer to that, but we can find out for you.
I'll chase that up with Watercare directly. And secondly, to Pearl, the work that you've been doing with the government, because you've got basically your department is holding the intelligence on a lot of this work as far as the China's Ford's concerned, the 360,000 tonnes of cardboard paper waste that we can repurpose in this country, re-export as quality paper or packaging materials offshore. And are we at the business case stage yet to present that to the government?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have shared all the information that we had developed, and we're asking actually for funding to spearhead further work on it, but that hasn't come through as yet. However, with the National Resource Recovery Task Force that they have set up, I am chairing that piece of work as well, so we will make sure that it gets prioritised and worked on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has an answer to your question, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Chair, the properties that are currently zoned urban in Clevedon that are not getting Watercare's wastewater service to them are particularly around the back towards Camp Sladden. Healthy Waters Department is currently working with Community Facilities to look at the business case for extending the network to service the public toilets and the camp itself, because obviously there's a large number of visitors that use those facilities. Therefore, if we can develop the case for council to extend the network to service its own facilities, the residents that live along that route will have an opportunity to connect.
Right.
Perfect answer, Scott. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Always give perfect answers, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
I've got a couple of questions about the proposed charge for the Auckland Botanic Gardens, and it goes to the charge but also the information that's informing it. And when I look at item 16 mentions officers also recommend the introduction of an international visitor fee for the Auckland Botanic Gardens to align with fees charged by the Auckland Art Gallery, Auckland War Memorial Museum and International Practice. Now, my understanding is that Regional Facilities Auckland recently voted to stop the international charge because it's costing them money, effectively. So they've had a significant reduction in the number of visitors. Obviously, that means they're not getting the sales through their shop, cafe, and the like. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did speak to Andrew Barnes and also the director at a recent meeting, and that was my understanding. So, I put to you a general query around charging and whether it actually works in the marketplace and may well be counterproductive. Certainly, international practice, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Certainly recent botanic gardens I've visited overseas have been free, so I may stand corrected there. Sometimes you pay to go and do special exhibitions or the like. Has there been consideration to the tour operators going to, let's say, the Hamilton Botanic Gardens, which are free, though there is a charge for guided tours, and that may or may not work. So I would really like to have some much better information on this, and I think that if we're going out for consultation, that we should be informing people about the pros and cons of something, not just saying that we think this is going to work because patently it may not work. And then the other question I've got, given that we have a strong and large Pacifica population in the south, will there be an impact on those people who are international visitors going to the regional botanic gardens? So just a few questions there, querying international practice, querying Auckland Art Gallery, querying what supporting information we're going out with, querying whether it's going to work or not.
Certainly. With regards to the Auckland Art Gallery, I met with the Visitor Services Manager there. He did indicate that they had seen some drop in numbers. However, they had also not had the two major exhibitions that had the year previously. The numbers where they saw a decrease was with the backpacker market, but he did report that they had seen some incremental increases to their shop spend and their per cap spend in the cafe, which was what we kind of used to inform this as well.
Can you confirm their vote? That is, the RFA board voted on the issue?
No, I haven't. I have not heard the RFA, but I can follow that up, certainly. With regards to international practice, there are a number of gardens in the UK, Eden Project namely as one, where they charge all of their visitors and they offer a free pass for locals where they can opt in to purchase a pass. What we're proposing at the gardens is not to put any barriers in place, so there wouldn't be a cashier as people come in. We'd be looking at targeting the tour operators and the online sellers and putting a contract in place so that they can't on-sell the gardens as a product at a higher price. And there would not be any impact on visitors that would be coming in either local or with their local family potentially.
Thank you very much. Is that right? So, Board Member Taipuri.
Kia ora, Madam Chair.
Kia ora.
Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou e tēnei wā. Just a small one around Māori impact statement. So I'll cut to the chase. Would you agree that there's a short-term impact on Māori in the former Manukau city area who are required to pay a base rate and don't have the option of bin tag, where in the world of reducing waste and creating incentives, they have an impact where they can't have that choice, where others in Auckland do.
Yes, that will be a change for...
Andrew.
Yes, that will be an increase of the $14 a year for Māori, or 16 for Māori in those areas. The average charge for residents in Auckland for their waste will be about the same as the charge in all the other areas of the city with the bin tags for people who have put 37 bins out a year at $4 a year.
Yeah, it's less, actually. It's less.
Oh, very close. And if you put out more than 37 bins, if you put out one a week, it's still cheaper than the bin tags.
Yeah.
But if you don't put out that many, it's cheaper.
Yes.
So that's a short-term impact on those who don't have that choice, correct?
Yep, that's the increase.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get to is you probably could have recognised that in the Māori impact statement. Thanks.
Very cool. Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question was what I'd alluded to right at the beginning of the day. Point 7 of this report, it says the average cost for residents will be on par with or lower than the cost of the rest of the city. Now, you've just told us the costs, and I was going to ask you about that. Can you clarify this statement in light of the fact that the average annual cost per ratepayer per year is about the same with the adopted changes, no matter where you live?
Yes.
Yeah, so this statement on point 7, that's not correct? Because it says here lower than the cost of the rest of the city. I'm a bit confused.
It says on par.
On par with or lower than?
Lower. It actually is slightly lower if you do 37 times 3. Yeah.
I suppose so.
Also, if you put it, I think the set-out rate's probably a bit higher in Auckland and Manukau, and we're not paying $4 for that.
Cool. So just the final follow-up question. Were we to adopt these changes, would that indicate that actually it is a fairer system across Auckland after the changes than before, in your opinion?
It's certainly fairer to directly charge the users of the service than the other alternative options, which are to raise the general rate or put the cost on all waste users across the city. The decision on whether a fixed charge in the rate or $1 per bin is fairer is probably a judgment for the councillors to make, informed by officers' advice.
Yeah, that's a very clever answer, Andrew. Thank you. With no further speaking or questions, I'll move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Henderson? Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Chair.
Oh.
No, I just wanted to ask that my vote be recorded against on A Roman numeral 10, the Botanic Gardens.
Oh, Botanica from Manaroba. Right. Right. I'll just run that past us again. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Noting that Councillor Walker and Councillor Newman have a Botanic Gardens. Yeah. Item 10 is the consideration of extraordinary business, and there is none. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I close the meeting at 11:40. We'll have a 5-minute break and go straight into governing body. Thank you. Sorry.